to record. Yeah.
Okay. So let's, without further ado, let me start. I mean, first of all, I guess, I mean, Silvio is one person in computer science today. I think needs very little introduction. I mean, he's definitely one of the most eminent computer scientists today in the world. I mean, Silvio has done like fundamental contributions to cryptography, uh, distributed computing. Okay, and some of his works I have myself used tremendously, like in Byzantine protocols and all. And he's very well known for his contributions to probabilistic encryption, zero knowledge proofs, random verifiable functions. For example, these have become some of the cornerstones of cryptography, as well as now the emerging technology of blockchains. And for his foundational contributions to cryptography, he was awarded the Turing Award in 2012. And he has also won the Gödel Prize, which is the highest award in theoretical computer science. And he's also won the RSA Prize in cryptography. So he's a member of the National Academy of Sciences and National Academy of Engineering and American Academy of Arts and Sciences. So pretty much he has won everything that can be won, I believe. Uh, but but after that, I mean, this is his academic thing. But now, I think 3 years back, I think in 2017, he was not satisfied with this academic thing, and he started a company. So Algorand, I mean, that is very exciting. I mean, I got very excited because I work in distributed computing, and Algorand is I think is really nice because it started with an academic research, and then it transferred into a startup company, which now Silvio is heading. So there are a lot of nice things coming out of Algorand on blockchains and even fundamental blocks on blockchains. So I mean, I thought that, I mean, Silvio himself presenting is starting his company. I mean the ideas that started his company would be fantastic. So I'm going to leave the floor to Silvio.
Well, thank you very much, Gopal, and thank you, Houston. I cannot see you, but I feel your presence, your good vibe. So it's very good that somehow no pandemic should stop scientific progress. So I'm very happy to talk to you about the technology and blockchain in particular. And so let me start with the blockchain. So at the aspirational level, the blockchain is very clear, right? It's a decentralized database that is readable by anyone, writable by anyone, and inalterable by anyone. So in a bunch of blocks, one after the other. Great. So the potential is essentially unlimited. Who does not like, a database that cannot be altered? Who does not like transparency? Who does not like the ability to generate trust among people who barely know each other even? But there is a problem that there is a big difference between aspiration and technology. By the way, this tension between aspiration and technology, I think, is a good one, because it is as humans, we always want to raise the bar of our aspiration higher and higher. But if at some point in time we are not sustaining our aspirations with real technology, somehow we are in trouble. So somehow our aspirations were so strong that they turned, in my opinion, into self-deception. So somehow the message was, take over, a big wave of decentralization is here. Journalists, consultants, sociologists, anthropologists, the general public, everybody got convinced that decentralized blockchains were already here. Really? Where? I mean, somehow, for the first few years, decentralized blockchains were a pure illusion. Why? Don't take my word for it. Take the one of Buterin, who is the founder of Ethereum, who famously put his trilemma, which simply states that in any blockchain, no matter how you do, there are at most two of the following three properties that they can survive: security, scalability, and decentralization. Wow. Let's imagine this is true, right? So somehow, who wants an insecure blockchain? Nobody. Who wants a non-scalable blockchain? Well, unless you want to use a blockchain to play with friends and family, nobody either. So then somehow the one who suffers is really decentralization. But if you are not interested in decentralization, why do you want to go through the trouble to set up a blockchain anyway? So if you, in some sense, the trilemma is simply not acceptable. Fortunately, is also actually false. So the trilemma was only empirically true for roughly a decade, and so for the first 2000 and change blockchains. How come? What do I mean by that? How come the trilemma was believed to be true for so long? What was so hard to make this impossibility that you can enjoy all three things together seems not only plausible, but even obvious. The challenge in a blockchain is not securing the chain. It is not guaranteeing that the database cannot be altered. And you cannot alter the content of a block or the order of a block. The real challenge is choosing the next block. Who should have the power to choose the next block? If I had this power, I would have more power than any absolute monarch in history. Why? Because I'm going to select those transactions that they are in the block that I chose, that they will be seen by everybody in the world, and the rest of the transaction, they don't see the light of day. Thank you very much. So that is somehow a tremendous challenge. And how do we solve it? It seems almost a non-technical challenge, right? Choosing the next block almost seems a political one. But the genius of a blockchain is to turn it into a technical challenge. So the first solution was proposed by Mr. and Mrs. V. Nakamoto's, how many they are, is proof of work, right? And proof of work roughly works as follows. To say, well, I'm not in charge to select the new block, neither are you. Let's do the following. Let's set up a computational game. We put forward a cryptographic riddle, which is very hard, and the first one who solves the riddle has the ability to choose the next block on behalf of all of us. So one day I will solve a riddle and I choose the block. Another day you solve a riddle and you'll choose the block. Sounds great. What is missing? What is missing is that the system, even though means well, becomes ultimately centralized. Why? Because when the difficulty of solving the riddle becomes higher and higher, and you have to use thousands and thousands of computers that you have to buy, refrigerate, and everything else. So you waste so much resources, it's so expensive a system to run, that fewer and fewer people can afford the luxury of solving the riddle and choose the block on behalf of all of us. Things are becoming so bad that in the Bitcoin blockchain, 2 or 3 mining pools, depending on the day, somehow select the next block on behalf of all of us. So that essentially, it meant well, but it became de facto centralized by the difficulty and expense of operating the system. Okay, next idea. Next idea is a delegated proof of stake, which roughly goes as follows. You see those 21 people? Don't they look honest? Yes, they do. And let me tell you, even more, not only they look honest, but I bet they will remain honest for the foreseeable future. So why don't we let them choose the next block on behalf of all of us? Well, I mean, that is simple, but that is centralized by design. At least the proof of work initially started to be decentralized, and then the expenses caused it to become centralized, but delegated proof of stake starts centralized, continues to be centralized, and will always be centralized, because 21 people, I mean, they don't make the cut, right, for being decentralized. You know what? There is going to be a bunch of other ideas, but rather than that variation of the themes, rather than survey them all, why don't I tell you what do they have in common and what weaknesses I find in them? So I find 2 main common flaws weaknesses. One is in the logic, and one is in the consensus definition. So let me start with the logic. The logic behind all these traditional approaches goes roughly as follows. The whole economy is secure if the majority of a very small piece of the economy are honest. Are you puzzled? You should be, because it makes no sense to me. So, in other words, here is what it's saying. Here, the red big circle is the whole economy. And the green dot there is the small piece whose honesty is crucial for the entire economy to work. So, you have trouble spotting the green piece? Let me enlarge it a little bit for you. Okay? So, who are these small piece that is crucial for the whole system to work? They are the miners in Bitcoin. They are the 21 delegates in delegated proof of stake. Now, you tell me, in the GDP of the world, in the global GDP, what fraction of the GDP is in the hands of the miners? So are you kidding me? You don't even need, you cannot even see the miners in the global GDP with a magnifying glass. You need an electronic microscope. So whenever you have a system in which you put in so few hands that they represent so little of the whole economy, the entire economy, that's a recipe for big trouble. All right, now let's talk a little bit about consensus. The traditional wisdom goes as follows. When, by whatever mechanism, somebody adds the block, the instruction is add a new block to the longest valid chain you see. Questions. What if I see two chains of equal length? Well, when break ties are random, add your block here or here, whatever you want to do. So if there is a longest chain, add the block to that. If there are two of equal lengths, or four, or three, or more, add it to one at random. The end. Well, why do I talk about this as consensus? Because of the underlying meaning, the rationale is the following. When I add a block to block BI, I'm implicitly voting for the validity of BI and all the block that preceded. Okay? So it's a vote of confidence on BI if I add my block to BI. I see my image shifting left and right. I hope it stabilizes at some point. So here is, for instance, three blocks added in a chain to each other. And so, and assume that whatever mechanism you are going to add the next block. So if you think the block B3 is invalid, or if you are dishonest, then you may add your block, say, to B2. But at this point, remember that somebody else may see, thank you for adding the block B3 prime. Now I see, now is your turn to add a block. You see two chains of equal length. For all you know, by following the rule, you may add your block to B3 prime, making this the longest branch to elongate from now on. And so what happens to shorted branches? Shorted branches, even if valid, because we've been ignored, say, by a malicious user, will de facto vanish. Hope nobody adds blocks to them, so de facto they are gone. And once they are gone, bye-bye to all the transactions that belong to these shorter branches. The moral of the story is, do not rely in a consensus mechanism of this sort on a block as soon as it appears. Why? Because the block may very well disappear if suddenly a longer branch emerges that bypasses your block. So, if a payment is made to you in a block that just appears, don't ship the goods, because it's not clear that that block will remain there. And in fact, the situation will be very complex, and this chain or forest that you want to call it may actually twist and turns. And so at some point in time, when you want to realign the block, the deeper the block in the chain, the more probable it will continue to stay on the chain. So don't ship the goods right away. Wait that at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks, etc. are added to the block that has a payment made to you. How deep should a block be before you can rely on it? 5 dips? 10 deep? You cannot be sure. That is the problem. So that is why the traditional approaches only guarantee an eventual consensus. By the fact that more and more people add blocks on top of yours makes it more and more probable that your block is here to stay, but you never know for sure. So if you see this two main reasons, one, putting the entire network at the mercy of the very small minority of the economy, of the network, and two, to have a consensus that never is clear when you reach consensus, is a drip, drip, drip process, made me feel that I should throw my hat into the arena, so to speak, because criticizing is always easy, okay? Not short of criticism. But somehow, I think it's a good practice after some criticism to roll up your sleeve and try to do things differently. And so came the notion of Algorand, which is, by the way, an alternative blockchain built from first principles. Because sometimes it's easier to start from scratch than try to patch up a building that doesn't quite stand as it is. So let me tell you right away the two concerns how we get changes. Let me start with Algorand logic. The Algorand logic is the following. Every token has the same power of every other token. And if most tokens are in honest hands, then the system is secure, period. Okay, so let me put it differently. What does this mean? That means, can I subvert Algorand? Yes, but the Algorand can be subverted only if you own the majority of this economy, and if you conspire with other people so that together you have the majority of this economy, then yes, you can sink Algorand and the very economy of which you have the majority of. Is this rational for you to do it? I don't think so. But certainly you want to contrast how better it is a logic like this than to have a logic in which you put everything in the hands of a very small piece of economy and hope that they do the right thing. This from the logic side. How about the consensus? The consensus in Algorand is not drip, drip, drip. On the opposite. Everybody agrees on the latest block before generating the next one. Okay? You agree, next block, agree, next block, agree, next block. So that means that there are no forks, which is a good thing, perhaps. So how do we agree on a block? Well, guess what? We have in the literature this notion of Byzantine agreement, which is the highest form of consensus in the most adversarial setting, due to Lamport, Peace, and Shostak. By the way, don't confuse Byzantine agreement with Byzantine fault tolerance. These are English tricks to use the word Byzantine to evoke that you mean the classical notion. But because you put a bunch of modifiers, you get something which has nothing to do with Byzantine agreement. The Algorand consensus is good, old-fashioned, classical notion of Byzantine agreement. Let me recall it for you. So what is a Byzantine agreement?
Silvio, can I just ask, I mean, there's a question from one of the attendees.
Yep.
So Philip is asking, doesn't Bitcoin require consensus before the next block?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Doesn't Bitcoin require consensus before the next block?
No, no. Bitcoin, see, when you see a new block added, what you are saying is the following: whoever I added this block is clearly in favor of this block. This is a block that I see, and I add one block. You say, okay, this guy is voting for this block and whatever precedes. That's good. But that does not mean that now this block is going to be on the chain, because if another block is added here and then creates a fork, then this block will be abandoned. So you have in what I call a drip agreement, the more blocks you added, the more, to block 10, the more block 10 is probable to stay. But if all of a sudden there is somebody who starts building on block 8, bypassing block 9 and block 10, and then somebody builds on that and keeps on building, then the blocks 9 and 10 will become a dead branch. And somehow you do not know. Only you know is that the more time passes and the more blocks are added on top of it, the more likely it is that whatever has been block 10 is going to stay in every future longest chain that there may be. It will be part of the way in which the longest chain passes through. Okay, so you never know.
Instead, so is this due to the propagation delay and asynchronous nature of the Bitcoin? I mean, you might have forks, blocks being added simultaneously.
Or you may have a fork for two reasons in Bitcoin. One is statistical reasons, unavoidable, by the way, by the way the system works, and maliciousness. So let me start with the thing. What does Nakamoto says? I want to have a riddle, and the riddle, by the way, the difficulty of the riddle is such to guarantee the following invariant. No matter how many people try to solve a riddle at any given point in time, no many people are online, no matter how many miners there are, no matter how hard they work, I want the riddle to be so difficult that we find one solution every 10 minutes. Okay. One solution every 10 minutes is like to say, well, maybe a lamp bulb fails once every 10 minutes in the town of Houston. Okay, you guys have very good light bulbs. But the fact that you aim for that doesn't mean that occasionally the riddle can be solved in 2 minutes or more. It has to be 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, somehow, if somebody solves it first, has the time to propagate the solution, and it becomes very rare that you have two blocks who appear at the same time. Because if you have two blocks that solve a riddle within a few seconds of each other, then you're going to find a fork, and therefore the chain splits. Okay, so my picture disappeared, but I hope that you continue to hear me.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So 10 minutes means the chain grows very slowly. One block, 10 minutes. Can I want to transact? Stand in line. Next block is wait for another 10 minutes for the next block. Can I produce and make the riddle easier so that I can actually produce a block, say, every minute? Not really. Why not? Because if you produce a block every 10 minutes, once in a blue moon, occasionally, you find two solutions a few seconds of each other, and thus a fork. But if you budget the difficulty of a riddle so that you find a solution every minute, then it is much more probable that you find two solutions a few seconds of each other, and therefore you find a fork. And you can resolve a fork But if you really have a forking galore, forking at every other block, then the situation becomes such a big spaghetti mess that even to figure out what is the longest chain is going to be very difficult. Okay.
Okay.
That is the problem of the consensus alla Bitcoin. So let me tell you instead what consensus algorithm means, right? I do not see at all on my myself. That's a problem. But let's see. Let's hope that I succeed. You guys see the slides at least, right? Because my image has disappeared.
No, we can see you though. We can still see you.
Oh, we can see. All right, that is good. Better than nothing. So, what is a Byzantine agreement? It's a communication protocol that guarantees the following two properties: agreement and consistency. Agreement means that everybody has a value in our own head. I have my value, you have your own value, and our value may be different, but no matter how different they are, at the end of our conversation, all the honest people will have agreed on a common value. And the picture, I hopefully, clarifies who is honest and who is dishonest here. If there is consistency, means the following. Just in case everybody starts with the same value, then not only we agree on a common value at the end of our discussion, but we agree on the very value we all started with. Okay? Agreement and consistency. So, agreement alone is not enough, because otherwise, if I have a protocol that says, no matter what, ladies and gentlemen, agree on 0. Yes, ma'am. In one shot, we agreed on 0. But so what? If we started with 27, we should agree on 27, not on 0. You need both properties, right? It is not immediate that somehow these two properties are really what you want, but it is actually clear that they are pretty meaningful anyway. And if you are like Gopal in distributed computing, then you know that Byzantine agreement is really what works out. Okay, but the protocol of Byzantine agreement was invented in the 70s. There are all kinds of other protocol proposed for doing this. So why don't we say plug in one of these protocols and be done with it? Well, not so fast. Why? Because Byzantine agreement has been invented a long time ago, but has been notoriously slow. How slow? Well, the maximum number of participants in any practical application was 12. Just imagine 12 over the internet, where there are billions of participants, or to a cryptocurrency. It's in a blockchain. It doesn't make the cut. Moreover, the players had to be common knowledge, meaning fixed and known in advance to everybody else. Neither of these properties really are done. Nonetheless, let's be sure that Algorand somehow new consensus mechanism does solve the problem of Byzantine agreement on a planetary scale and with unparalleled efficiency. So I'm not changing the definition. The definition is old. We just found a better way to do it. So what does this mean that now we agree on every block? Here is Algorand in action. Behold block 1. That's the Genesis block. That is the only block that in any blockchain is pretty clear what it is, because it's part of a description of a protocol. Next to block 1, you find a favor, perhaps a universal symbol of effortlessness and easiness, and ease. And so, and as this favor effortlessly falls to the ground, the chain unfolds. All right? One block after the other. When you say, well, what happens to fork? What happens to proof of work? Well, guess what? There is no forks and there are no proofs of work. Because we agree on every block, we don't solve any riddle, we find an agreement, and we proceed. And because we agree, there is no fork. And what does this mean? No forks means transaction finality. Once you've agreed on, the majority of the people agreed on block, there are not two majorities who agree on different things. So once a block has been agreed upon, it is the only block possible in position I. And no proof of work means easy participation. I can participate and to the consensus in Algorand with my laptop. All right. So now let me go a little bit deeper and to say, how exactly does block generation works in Algorand? Actually, it is, let me describe in a magical way how it works. And trust me that the magic will actually be replaced by mathematics, okay? But it's a bit easier to talk about magic than it is to talk about math. So here it is. In a magic phase 1 is the proposal phase. A random token is selected among all tokens in circulations. Well, this token must belong to some public key. By magic, that public key becomes known to all users. Well, this public key belongs to somebody. That somebody proposes, digitally signs, and propagates a block into the network. End of phase 1. Okay, phase 2. The agreement phase. 1,000 tokens are, by magic, randomly selected among all tokens in circulation. They belong to some keys, which, by magic, all become known to all users. And the owners of these keys agree to run the Byzantine agreement and agree on the block proposed by the first user. End of story. That is the new block added. All right. By the way, why is it that we need a phase 2 rather than a phase 1? Because in any society, and a blockchain is no exception, there is a percentage of bad guys. Criminals, if you want. How many of us are criminal? Well, hopefully very few, maybe 0.5%, 1%, 2%. If we live in a very dangerous society, 10%. 10% criminals, you should not leave home, okay? You should remain in lockdown forever. It's too dangerous out there. Well, let's assume that we live in a very dangerous society. Well, if 10% of the coins, of the tokens, belong to bad guys, when 10% of the time the proposer of a block is going to be a bad person. And what can he do? Well, he cannot spend my money because he cannot forge my digital signature, but he can tell you the next block is X. He can tell me the next block is Y. He can tell her the next block is Z, and thereby putting discord among us about what the chain is. That's why we need the magic phase 2. In the magic phase 2, we choose 1,000 tokens, but now notice at random. Then even if 10% of the token belong to bad guys, if I choose them 1,000 at random, the probability that the majority of these tokens are in bad hands is very, very, very small. That's why even though the proposal block may be proposed by a bad person, and he may propose 2 or 3 blocks to confuse us, in the agreement, there is going to be an honest majority, and therefore, we are going to come up with a single block, which we believe, all of us believe, is the next block. The end. That's somehow the logic. Okay, says Silvio, thank you very much for this high-level explanation. I have a question. One question, you should have many, many, many questions. But here is the most popular question that I hear when I speak about Algorand. Who chooses the committee? I mean, because if I understood correctly, Silvio, you're saying all the power is that if you choose a committee at random, you get a majority of honest users, and that's how things work. But who flips the coin to choose the committee? Do you mind if I flip it? Absolutely, I do mind. You should not flip it, and I should not flip either. So then who selects them? And the answer in Algorand is a little bit unorthodox. Namely, that committee members choose themselves. What? Committee members choose themselves? That is a terrible idea. Perhaps it's the worst idea in history, right? Because if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to choose myself every single time because I want to have as much control as possible in choosing the next block. So I choose myself today and tomorrow and the day after that, forever. But not so fast. What does it mean that in Algorand you choose yourself? Means that each one of us runs our own lottery inside the privacy of our computers, and the lottery is cryptographically fair. What does that mean? That no matter how much I try to cheat, no matter how much computational resources I have, even if I have an enemy state with an entire nation with huge computational resources, I cannot improve my chance of winning the lottery by not even a little bit. So think of it as like you pull only once a lever of a slot machine. And either you win or you lose. If you win, you get actually a winning ticket, which means a mathematical proof that you are a winner of the lottery, and therefore you are part of the committee, and you have to listen to you because you are part of the committee. And what do? You propagate in the network your winning ticket together with your opinion about the block. And if you pull the lever, you don't win, nothing. You can talk, but nobody will pay attention to what you say because you're not a part of the committee. All right. Now, let me actually argue that this way of doing things is super decentralized. Because essentially, I pull one lever for each token of mine that I own. Each token has one chance to win the lottery. And so every token is treated equally. Every token has the same chance of being selected like any other token. In Algorand, there are 10 billion tokens. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of granularity. You don't get more decentralized than that. And my lottery is not a joint lottery. It's my individual lottery that I run with the privacy on my computer, and therefore the lottery is cryptographically fair. I can prove that I won, but I can never cheat. That's why it's a bunch of individual decentralized lotteries.
So Silvio, is this the verifiable random functions thing?
Yes, de facto, yes. But I'm hiding it because it is too complicated to talk about. I'm talking about at higher level. Yes, you're right. Now, let me tell you that this is super scalable. Well, how long does it take to pull the lever and run your own lottery? How much amount of computation does this entail? 1 microsecond of computation. Wow, 1 microsecond, that is very fast. But wait a minute, if I win, which I can figure out in a microsecond, if I win, what should I do? Nothing. You should propagate 2 things, your winning ticket and your opinion about the block. Can 1,000 people propagate 2 short messages, a winning ticket and 1 opinion? Absolutely. That's why the system is very scalable. Because if there are a billion tokens out there, and you want a committee of 1,000 tokens, you choose the lottery to be 1 in a million of probability of winning, and you roughly have your 1,000 token committee. Whether it's 1 billion, 10 billion, 1 trillion, I don't care. You choose the parameters so that you actually have your 1,000 winners, and only 1,000 winners propagate the winning ticket and the opinion about the block. That is scalable. Finally, let me argue that the system is secure. Let's assume that I am a very bad guy And I'm very powerful bad guy at that. I'm so powerful that I can corrupt instantaneously any 1,000 people in the world I want to corrupt. Whom I want to corrupt? The owner of the winners of the lottery. But I have a problem. I can corrupt any 1,000 people I want, but whom should I corrupt? Should I corrupt this lady in Shanghai or this guy in Paris? I have no idea, because the winners are decided by a lottery. The lottery is private, and only once you reveal that you won the lottery, nobody knows but you that you are a member of the committee. So I'm very powerful, but I don't know whom to corrupt. However, after the 1,000 winners propagate their winning ticket and their opinion about the block, now everybody, including me, figure out who they are, the 1,000 winner, and due to my powers, I corrupt them, all 1,000 of them in one shot. But so what? Whatever they had to say, they've already said it. Their winning tickets and their opinion about the block are virally propagating over the network, and I do not have the power, no more than the US government has the power, to stop a message virally propagated by, say, WikiLeaks. In other words, the system is secure because beforehand, I don't know whom I should corrupt. And afterwards, it's too late to corrupt them. And if you think about it, that is the way in which we somehow solve the trilemma. Okay? Okay. So, by the way, a blockchain is not only about consensus,
so Silvio,
but it's actually a platform.
I have a couple of questions from the audience. So one question by Vivek.
Either now or later, but perhaps maybe we come to a close, because I want to make sure that.
Okay, sure. Okay.
I say,
bye-bye.
So,
please go ahead. Yeah.
At this point, I realized that very smart contracts, by the way, that is really one of the gifts of the blockchain to the world. And we have idea to do it in very different ways than everybody else. But let's click over here and bypass to conclusion. That's very good. We are ready to conclude, and then we go to Q&A. So I believe that the blockchain in the consensus protocol, in the smart contracts, in the interoperability, whatever that is experiencing a virtuous cycle. The virtuous cycle goes from reality to myth to acceptance to technology, and roughly works like this. I am unhappy with the status quo. Why? Because I have a goal that is not achieved. Very good. I announce the goal. The myth means that I'm going to so good is this goal that I start talking about as if it already exists. At some point, the network realizes, you know what, we're talking about something, the emperor had no clothes. I'm sorry, but this goal is farther than achieved. This acceptance is very good, because once we realize, then technology can somehow get serious, roll up his sleeves and say, let's try to achieve the damn goal. And once technology, in particular young people, and best of all students like most of you in the audience, it's only a matter of a little time in which, you achieve your goal and the cycle can continue. And this has been working consensus, smart contracts, interoperability, and so on. So my advice is never confuse myth and reality. It's actually a good start to separate them. And even though you seem that, well, the myth is over here, of a bunch of a very deep cliff, and the reality is over there, once you realize you are not there, it's only a question of time before technology is going to bridge myth and reality, and everybody experiences a happy ending. So my take is that blockchains are very sophisticated and very useful goals, but do require sophisticated technology. And never be afraid of technology. I mean, technology, in my opinion, is quintessentially human. When we came down from the trees, forging our first tool, we became more, not less human. technology is the creative realization of our aspirations. It is our response to the increasing complexity of our world, our financial world, our legal world, our social world, even our physical world. Things are becoming so complex that our even survival as a species is going to depend on our ability to develop more and more sophisticated technology. Technology has been our past, is our present, and will be our future. So, happy future, everybody. And now, any questions? We have already achieved the end of it. We can go back and answer some questions.
So thank you, Silvio. I mean, thanks a lot. Let's thank Silvio first for his fantastic talk. I mean, it's a great overview for anybody who is even trying to come into blockchains as well. So I'm going to ask some questions now. I mean, I've been waiting to do that. So one question from Vivek is, there are approximately around 2 billion Algorand in circulation with a maximum supply of 10 billion. How does one decide upon the number of coins to introduce?
Oh, so somehow this is the Algorand Foundation for now has been figure out a schedule for introducing of these coins. And by the way, why do you want to introduce these coins? For a variety of reasons. So you want to finance somehow research in blockchain and in Algorand in particular. You may want to give grants to developers who want to develop a very cool tool, but they lack the ability to do so. And so, in some sense, this thing has been the foundation that has been, which is an independent entity that is actually trying to do the schedule. But the foundation has actually figured out that centralizing even the rollout of the budget, if you want, of the development of this ecosystem is not a good idea. And so they are launching a governance mechanism in which they allow to the token holders to express their opinions of how the money should be, to be yet minted, should be introduced at what rate and with what finality. And that's what is you're going to see is going to happen in this first half of 2021.
Okay. So again, I mean, if audience want to ask questions, they can answer. They can ask in the chat, or also they can raise their hand. So one other question from Vitali is, how does the Algorand rewards distribution is organized without the proof of work?
How token distribution is what? Sorry, I heard the proof of work at the end.
So how does the Algorand rewards distribution is organized without proof of work? So I mean,
okay. So first of all, we must realize one thing, that a proof of work necessitates of rewards. By all means, because if I try with my laptop to participate to mining, I'm actually losing money. What do I lose? The manual electricity of my computer. So, but it's very little, sure, but it's a net loss because I will never win. So I can only lose in expectation. Even if you count when I count to leave, I'm going to lose. The only way that I can break even, or maybe even making a profit, is to have a massive scale. So when I really have racks and racks and racks and racks and racks of computers, if you Google Bitcoin miner, you see some gigantic cave refrigerator at extra electricity, having all kind of thousands and thousands and thousands of hyper specialized computers. These are computers that have been produced with only one goal: solving the cryptographic riddle of Bitcoin, nothing else. Can you do PowerPoint? No. Can you do Microsoft? Are you kidding that you're going to slow me down? I hyper-specialized hardware for only doing one thing. So in a system like that, where things are so expensive, you must reward people, otherwise nobody will participate. In a system instead like Algorand, in which you had to invest a microsecond of computation and then sending two messages, so to speak, my laptop can, in the background, participate. So, and when things are so damn cheap, we can talk, do I need to be rewarded, yes or no? So let me actually be provocative and to say that Algorand can actually work technically without even need of reward. Because if you don't, let me put it this way, when was the last time that you shut off the Gmail application in your laptop to save energy? Did I hear never? I didn't hear because I'm isolated from you guys. You see me, but I cannot see you. But I predict that nobody ever has done this. Why? Because it's so damn cheap that we don't even think about it. And that is essentially the right analogy when you think about participating in consensus to Algorand. Not much is asked for you. So to demand something, so just the people who believe in it is okay to do it. So as it stands, we have now a reward system in which you just reward to being a member of a community, because we don't have this reward finalized to the production of a block, because there is almost so cheap. But having this mechanism for reward, which is generalized, allows now the Algorand community to migrate these rewards when we talk about the governance. Remember that what I said before, it says now we want people to review grants applications and to have a mechanism of a reward to say, again, is open to everybody, but it requires a little bit of human work because the technology work that is not in Algorand is really minimal. But whenever you have to think about it, what are the good projects to finance? What are the good app that somebody the ecosystem will be better if these apps exist and therefore we want to finance? What is research proposal and so on and so forth? All this, the reward will be monitored. But right now, everybody, for a little while longer, will receive rewards for just being a member of a community. End of story.
So this is another thing I want to ask. I mean, another person, Vivek, is also asking this. What about proof of stake? Is there anything faster than proof of stake, and can it be implemented to make consensus faster? So is Algorand doing anything like proof of stake?
Well, proof of stake, proof of work is essentially one thing with small variants. Proof of stake is a portfolio of very related ideas, right? I discussed the most popular one, which is the delegated proof of stake. And the delegated proof of stake is to say, we somehow initially elected 21 people, and they will take care of us. That's easy. And by the way, their influence is proportional to the amount of stake they have, hence proof of stake. But as I said, that is, even if you elect these people for a year and you let them there to take all the decision on behalf of all of us, that is centralized anyway. So what I'm describing here is what I'd like to call pure proof of stake. And pure proof of stake means that I'm not committing my stake here and there, but somehow wherever the algos are, anywhere they want to be, they can be in my pocket, ready to be, on my fingertips, ready to be spent. They can be invested in some of the tools that the blockchain offers me, you, and everybody else. But wherever they are, you are eligible to run this microsecond lottery and contribute to consensus. That is this totally distributed, pure proof of stake, where essentially it is the majority of the algos, wherever they are welcome to participate. That is what I call the pure proof of stake, rather than delegated proof of stake. There is all variants. There are bonded proof of stake. There are delegated proof of stake. What we have instead is this other pure proof of stake.
So so you choose these people randomly, but is it weighted by their worth or stake? You weight
absolutely, because the way I said it, if you remember, is that every token that you have has a lever,
okay.
right? And so if I have 1/10 of your coins, one of your coins wins. You are 10 more times than me to have one or more of your coins in the committee. That is all right. So if you think about that, by the way, because as happens in understanding, the more you understand, the more question one has to say, well, Silvio, you said that the lever is 1 microsecond, but I understand there is 1 microsecond for each token. What if you are very, very, very rich, you have billion tokens, then you have to put a billion levers? I feel pity for you. Okay, well, thank you very much. But somehow, by adding extra math, you can actually make sure that pulling the lever is 1 microsecond independent of how many tokens you have. Only 1 or 2 or 10 or a billion is still 1 microsecond. And somehow the system works as if every token independently pulls the lever, so you don't have 1 microsecond multiplied by a billion, because that becomes a fair amount of seconds, right? Okay. But you have a 1 microsecond period. That's it.
Okay. So another question by Jing is, how does Algorand deal with storage overhead?
Storage what, sorry?
Storage overhead.
Storage overhead. Okay. So I don't know. The question is ambiguous. I'm going to have, I split it in two parts. When you talk about storage, I'm assuming you're not talking about smart contract storage. That is a different story, and we have a different solution, which I even begun to explain here. But somehow, what happens in Algorand is that the ability that you agree on every block, in some sense, you do not have to look back. In other words, once you know the last thing you agree, then you have all you need to propose and select the next block and vote on the next block. So in traditional systems, instead, consensus, because it's a drip, 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 you are voting on the block that you just attached to and the block before it, and therefore you have to know all the history of transaction from Adam and Eve, so to speak, until now, because otherwise we don't know in what sense the consensus has no meaning. But in Algorand, because you have this agree next, agree next, agree next, all you have to carry to compute correctly, select and vote correctly on the next block is the last block, a snapshot of the system, which is much, much easier to store, comprehend, and do. And by the way, we have also a mechanisms that will be to make sure that when you want to join the system from the very beginning, and you want to join now, say, we give you the snapshot, which is a very compact piece of information, together with a mathematical proof that what I'm handing over really is the ith block and the ith snapshot of the Algorand system. Mm-hmm. And this proof is linked to what? Mm-hmm. Is linked to the only thing that is for sure certain in any blockchain, the Genesis block. So you're going to get essentially a mathematical proof that this is the ith block of the Algorand system, and the proof is linked to the initial first block number 1. And you can inspect it in isolation. And so the proof is, by the way, compact. The snapshot is compact. Welcome to Algorand. You have all the information you need. Help us move the history forward.
So another question by Raunak is how energy efficient is mining Algorand? Is it simple enough for transactions to be done on an IoT device?
On what type of device?
IoT.
I think, so I'll tell you one thing. To each one his own thing. I'm a technologist, but on the theoretical side, let me tell you, with my understanding of this technology, certainly a laptop is plenty to do it. And in some sense, a cell phone should also be plenty. But remember that even receiving a block, unless you have a special subscription for your cell company, that may be a little bit other expenses. To me, the sweet spot is really when you talk about internet communication and a laptop, that should be where you want to be for sure. Then I'm not really the person to ask about the latest and greatest of devices and.
No, but it's pretty lightweight. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
very, very, very lightweight. The whole thing has been decided to be lightweight, and because we want to be green. We don't want to contribute to heating the planet. Whether it's natural causes or human-made doesn't matter. We should not add to it, and it's very fast. And by the way, what I believe the fast is actually very democratic. So any token is a part of anybody else. You don't need to be elected because you can self-select yourself. So you are a token, you are a participant. Help us generating the next block, and you can do it. Is not. We believe in lightness in a lot. Being light is good here. Lightness and decentralized is a very thing. Decentralization really works where it becomes as efficient as a centralized system.
So one more question. What about the network, the underlying network? Is it a peer-to-peer network that powers Algorand? I mean, how do you create this network? It's running on the internet. It's a peer-to-peer network on the internet.
Okay. Actually, Algorand has yet another property. Sorry, guys, but I must confess that after this, I must hop to my next video call. These days, okay. I just live in front of a computer. Okay. But that is an excellent question. And it discusses another aspect of Algorand that is not as well as understood, another advantage, but is actually very crucial too. So, which is the issue of security, and in particular, network security. When you discuss the security of Bitcoin, usually it's popularized as follows. If the majority of mining power is in honest hands, then proof of work works correctly. Okay, so it looks like to say, hey, let's look at the miners. There are very few mining pools. Say, is this mining pool honest? So if you convince yourself that they are the majority, say, you're done. The system works, is secure. Not quite. Because a protocol requires of two things. It's a piece of software, distributed software, that everybody of us has to run. But the software is executed on an underlying communication network. So if I am a bad guy, I have two ways to attack the system. First, thank you for your instruction on what to do if I'm honest. I'm not honest. I'm not going to follow your instruction. I'm going to do whatever is best for me. Thank you very much. The second part is that actually I can attack the very communication network in which your protocol is run. Now, if you do this with Bitcoin, the security of Bitcoin vaporizes, even if 100% of the miners are honest. All miners on the earth are honest. Okay? How can that be? Well, remember that somehow, if you understand this in Bitcoin, then you can see what the difference in Algorand is. So you have a riddle that is going to be solved in 10 minutes, no matter who tried to solve it. Assume that I'm an evil guy, and you say, you know what, I don't want to buy supercomputers to beat the miners who are all honest here in this example at their own game, too expensive. What I'm going to do, I'm going to attack the network. I'm going to choose one of the 5 continents at random, let's see, South America. Okay, let's assume that I cut off South America. There are cables from North America, the rest of the world. I cut them all, I isolate for an hour South America. By the way, I don't need to go underwater to cut cable. I can actually infect the routers so that, to isolate a continent if I want. And if I'm smart enough, I actually reprogram the routers so that happy birthday messages go back and forth across all the continents. Nobody sees a damn thing. But Bitcoin control messages, the solution to the riddles, etc., block proposed, they stay in South America, and in the 4 other populated continents, they stay over there. Okay, so then what happens? Then what happens is that South America sees, damn, these riddles as becoming a little bit harder than before because they are the only ones who can propose and see the solution to a riddle. If they are 1/5 of the power of the world, of the miners of the world, is something where having one solution every 10 minutes, we're going to see a solution every other much longer amount of time. The rest of the world see also a little bit of a slowdown, but it's 4/5 of the speed. So think of it, by isolation, you have the chain is split in 2 chains. One who goes at, say, 40 miles an hour, and one goes at 10 miles an hour, representing 1/5 of the continent is missing, right? He goes at 10 miles an hour. So therefore, he elongates the chain much more slowly. Now, what is, as an attacker, is my intention in doing this? Because I can double spend money. Because remember, once, the network figure out that one of the chain is a short chain, the chain disappears, the short branch dies. If I spend $1 billion in South America, receiving goods and services, whatever I need to have, then my debt is canceled automatically by having this branch disappear. So I spend $1 billion in the rest of the world. I spend $1 billion in South America. I only have $1 billion, but nobody noticed because I split the network, and my $1 billion in South America disappears. So remember that the longest chain is the rest of the other 4 continents. Let's say that after 2 hours that I seize the control of isolated South America, somebody says something is funny going on here, restore law and order. Then now, even in South America, people say, guys, what we were doing? We were elongating the short chain. The longer chain is over there. By the instruction, everybody goes to elongate the longest chain. And therefore, my debt is erased, law and order is restored, but a few people have lost a lot of money. Because even though all miners are honest, this attack has nothing to do with the miners. You isolate a continent, it has a big chunk of miners. In that chunk of on that part of the world isolated, I can double spend with impunity, even if all miners are honest. It has nothing to do with honesty of the miners. Good. So Algorand now has another remarkable property that is immune to network partition. So if you try to do the same thing in Algorand, you can't. Why? Because 2 things are happening. If you isolate a chunk of the world, either you don't have enough honest majority to grow the chain in one side of the world, only in one side of the world, but not in the other, or you don't have enough majority of the world in this part of the world and the other part of the world, because you are dividing the guys, say 60-40, you don't have enough quorum to grow the chain. But that is good because the chain can stop. Remember, the chain, Blockchains are a distributed algorithm. If the network doesn't work, the algorithm stops. That's only good. But the difference is once the algorithm restarts, in Algorand, nothing bad has happened. You just have a suspension of work production, but then you continue without losing money, anybody losing money. And in proof of work, first of all, you may have slow down, and then you can actually have somebody loses a lot of money. So this ability not to depend, being immune to network attacks, means that you have actually the liberty that you don't need a peer-to-peer network. You can actually have a bunch of people who volunteer to be to be the relay network. And do I trust them? No, but I don't need to trust them, because even if the network at most can prevent growing temporarily the chain, but it cannot be used to mount an attack. So you have here a much richer network to do and to solve the problem than to do somehow a peer-to-peer network. But that you can do if and only if, because we are immune to network attack. And therefore, I don't mind to say, you know what, let's trust, AT&T, whomever, Nippon Telegraph, or whatever wants to run the network, not because I trust them, but because I know they can help us without being able to hurt us.
So this is very interesting. So the point is, so you need to know the network, the n, the number of people that you expect. So if n becomes much smaller, you won't have 1,000 people. Basically, that's what I'm saying. You'll be like, there'll be like only 300 people, and there won't be enough committee members. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, by the way, no. Remember that what I say is the following: that I sample 1,000 tokens, not people. So some rich person may actually have finding a committee that 3 or 4 of his token or her tokens are part of the committee.
Right.
So in some sense, even if I have 2 people, I sample 1,000 tokens, and these are the committee. So I can always sample 1,000 tokens. It's not that I have to do something else if the participants are less than 1,000. So because I sample tokens, not
no,
people.
but then how do you know that the network has been partitioned without really, unless
you don't. But the point is that you may actually experiencing a temporary outage. It could be that the nation had been the network is all down everywhere in the world. There is heaven forbid there is a nuclear disaster. It could happen, right? Or has been you are part of a selected group which has been targeted to be attacked. You don't know which is which, unless you have radio or other TV things that you trust to have another view of whatever has happened outside. But you don't. But you know that whether has been partitioned or not been partitioned, you don't give a damn, because once nobody can steal from you, nobody can double spend, and when the system restarts, links are restarts, everything starts correctly from where you left it without any bad events happening. So in other words, what I'm saying is that this, guys, sorry I have to go now, but I want to say one thing. So that is actually a marvelous field, let me tell you, because I think it is at least at the intersection of 3 major fields. One is computer science. One is actually distributed computation and cryptography in particular. And the other one is economics. So you must engineering the system so that it works, and vis-a-vis incentives and all other things. And is a very, in complexity, there is opportunity, and usually there is a lot of fun, because if you are master of one of these 3 aspects, cryptography, distributed computation, or economics, you can do. And if you are master of one, and then you become more and more expert on another one, you are going to have even more fun. And if you just happen to be knowledgeable about all 3, then you are in heaven, okay? And it is really very challenging technologically, which when you have a world challenge and you put together with youth and you put together with academic institution like University of Houston, when you say, wow, that is really where the fun is. I want to be challenged, but I know that it can be done. It's not an impossible challenge. And by the way, the opportunities and the rewards, because it's very good for society if we can actually have something that is so distributed, therefore so robust, that somehow is so efficient, so low cost, that it can actually power a financial application without having, putting very sophisticated financial tools at the available to anybody. And because otherwise, very sophisticated tools, they have a very sophisticated intermediary, which they want to be paid a lot of money, and they never care if poor he wants to transact with poor she. Let me tell you, the big financial entities, they don't even care about the transaction between two people, so two poor people. So because there is nothing for them to claim. So if you have a blockchain efficiency introduced in this, actually there is a lot of social good as well as a technical good to achieve. So I hope you join us in this big venture, and wish you good luck, and happy post-pandemics. I hope it's over soon, and I hope to visit you guys in person soon. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. I mean, it was a great talk. I mean, it's